Welcome back to the Acoustic Shop, everybody, where today we're going to be hanging out, talking about guitars. I'm your host, John, and this is my buddy, Jeremy.
Buddies, huh?
Yeah, we're
I thought we
buddies
were just
today.
brothers. We're more than buddies, we're brothers. And guys, we're coming to you from Springfield, Missouri, where we're kind of acting as your doulas in this journey
is gross.
to acquiring
I don't
and
like
meeting
it.
your new guitar for the first time.
Who wrote this script? Get it out of here. This is horrible.
I thought that was very illustrative.
Yeah, I don't like it. Anyway, Martin has taken their popular X series and they've given it a few serious upgrades, and they're definitely worth your attention.
Box underneath the 6th Street Bridge, and that could be you.
Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so that you can continue to see cool stuff like what we're going to talk about today. And check out the acousticshop.com, where we're going to have details about these guitars as well as a whole bunch of others, Jer. So let's talk about the specs of the new X series. They price anywhere from $599 up to $899 depending on the model, and that's the X2s, the X1s, it all depends. They also come in a myriad of different body styles, including the Dreadnought, Single O, Double O, Triple O, and the GPC, or Grand Performance Cutaway. As far as the tone woods, all of these are going to feature Martin's HPL material, which is a kind of pressed together high pressure laminate is what HPL stands for. It's using paper and resins and plastics, and it just smashed them together into a very robust material that's actually not bad sounding. Now, some of these are going to have solid Sitka spruce tops. If you go to the 2 or the 3 series, you'll see that with a HPL back and sides, where some of these, like the one I'm holding, is going to have an HPL top as well. You do have, the neck will be a solid or a select hardwood. Now that's going to be different on the X1s. Right now they're still doing their pressure laminated side.
Multiple layers.
Yeah, multiple layered laminate. I don't know, forget what they call that. It does have a head plate with a HPL material with the Martin decal. As far as the woods on the bridge and fretboard, if you're on the X1 series like this, it will be rich light material, whereas the other ones are going to be what they're calling select hardwoods, and that gives them the option to change that later on. Gives them
Changes between the different
models as well as also later on in build, they can make that change and not have to redo it. Sorry guys, it's just the way it works. As far as the nut and saddle, it's going to have the Corian nut and a tusk, at least that's what is listed as a saddle. So not going up to the bone nut and saddle that we see in the higher end guitars that Martin makes. All of the X series is going to have these satin chrome tuners, which I actually like a lot. They're the sealed tuners. They look very attractive. I think that looks great. Then we'll have the Spruce X bracing. So even though it's an HPL like on this, the top, it's still going to have wood bracing on the inside. You'll find that most of them will have a satin, soft looking finish. Even on the HPL material, it will look that way. It also is going to have a hand rubbed neck, so it's not really a super finished one, but it does
like
have
an open pore feel to the sound.
like an open pore rubbed kind of finish on all those. They do come with a gig bag. As far as the neck profile, the big upper change here was the beveled neck shape that they took from the Martin high-end series, which is not the hard edges that they had on the fretboard before. They actually beveled all that stuff to make it feel more comfortable in the hands. As far as the nut width now, all of these guitars are coming in at 1 3/4, which is becoming the much more preferred neck width that we're seeing on more guitars nowadays. All of these guitars are going to come with electronics, so that is now, it's one of the big changes is the Martin E1 series, which is really cool. It has a built-in tuner, all of it internal, and is pretty darn nice pickup setup all the way through. All of these are going to be very eco-friendly. That was actually the original purpose of the HPL guitars, was that they are not going to be things, we're not cutting down trees in order to build them. Alternatives, definitely. So you'll use the rich lights quite a bit, as well as more sustainable wood products and the HPL material in the first place.
All right, John, you mentioned a little bit that the original intent of them was for environmental reasons. What is kind of the origin of the history of the X series, and what is different with the new series?
Well, yeah, that was exactly what they were trying to do, was create something. Chris Martin's been pushing a more eco-friendly Martin guitars for quite a long time.
Just a sustainable plan for the future of Martin, not just to say, hey, I like hugging trees and being planetary, but also just knowing long-term, for the brand to really survive, they need to have some alternatives to wood just to not deplete the market.
Well, let's just face it. The fact is if you'd have talked to me 20 years ago, I would have told you we had all the mahogany in the world. Nobody has to worry about that. And this was already after Chris Martin had started moving into sustainable materials. The fact is most of our hardwoods are getting harder and harder to source. Those that are, some of them have been getting done very irresponsibly. We've been seeing people harvesting ways that are not good for the sustainable projects. So this was an idea that they came up with using the HPL material. They also came up with this neck style, which was using more scrap material that they had left over.
Let no wood go to waste.
That's exactly correct. So that was the purpose of it. Now we're kind of moving on and realizing that there's an affordability factor also that it needs to be there, as well as rugged.
Durability.
These are very, very durable guitars. They're going to take a licking. I have a little Martin that I bought when my daughter was born. It had already had a big ding in it where somebody hit it really hard. But I knew if I was going to get something like that, that she could be able to play when she became bigger, I was going to go with that. I was not going to hand her a full-on wood guitar. That's just all there was to it.
Probably wouldn't have survived that.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been able to do that. So I bought that used, by the way. So if there are all you people that are like, yeah, there's that Elite John getting his daughter when she's born a Martin guitar. No, it wasn't quite like that. I found that very affordably.
Most
because
people
it
look
had
at
a
you
ding.
and think there's that Elite John.
I looked pretty elite.
But so originally they had, the prints and stuff were very kind of plain, and they
Very
didn't
plain.
look
In
very
fact,
attractive.
this was very common right here, this mahogany one. I'm going to go out and say it, guys. I'm not a big fan of this look. This is better. Actually, has more flame in it. There's a little bit of a flame going on
Almost
here
can
than
look
the
a little bit
original
more
ones.
natural.
There was some that were pretty darn boring looking.
And then
So-
recently, even before we became a Martin dealer, these caught your eyes at the Martin booth at NAMM, and then we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the reimagined version of the X Series, remastered version. What big changes? The first thing that popped to the eye was just choosing to
New prints.
if you're gonna do these prints, why not make them look attractive, make them look premium, even come out with different wood. Again, this isn't a different tone wood. It's just
Looks
the
better.
appearance of a different tone wood.
Yeah, that one is the Zircote back and sides. Guys, it was funny when this was released at the NAMM show. Again, everybody was kind of hitting me like, they have Brazilian printed back and sides.
Well, that's
Brazilian
silly. It's
logo.
still
That's
just
so
HPL.
silly. Guys, if you're going to do it, why not make it look more attractive? I thought it was actually the smartest thing that Martin ever did when it came to the X Series. It is still important to make it look well, and it doesn't cost any more to do so. So I found that to
change
be...
the tone of the guitar, but it's going to look a little nicer. And it's made people gravitate more towards, man, I really love that Brazilian look to that one.
Yep.
Versus the Zircote.
Zircote or the
Koa.
Cocobolo, Koa. All these are much more attractive prints, and it was definitely worth doing. They also went and upgraded the inlays, making them look a little bit more sharp. They did the rosettes to make them a little nicer on the inlays of the new X2s, as well as the new neck profile. They were taking this from their higher end Martin guitars. They knew before there was a very sharp edge, and it had a sharp edge to the way the fretboard met the neck. It was just a less comfortable neck shape all the way around, and they decided to make it more like the high end guitars that we love. Why not? It doesn't, it makes no sense not to do that.
Now, from the start, have they always had the option to do a solid wood top, or have they all been?
There has been solid wood top options forever, and honestly, if you're asking my opinion, I would tell you, go ahead and splurge, spend a little bit
unless
extra.
you really just want the most durable guitar and you're not
No,
really worried about
that's true.
tone and you're going to plug in most of the time, HPL top might be the right option. But if you're acoustically want it to sound as good as possible, I think it's worth the upgrade to the solid wood top.
Absolutely. They also went and changed its out-of-the-box setup. This was a really important thing for them. They wanted to make sure that when you grab these guitars, they were set up better. So they are running them through a better setup, making sure they are a higher quality, easier playing guitar. They then went and upgraded the electronics, so it wasn't just their basic, under the saddle transducer. They now have a preamp built in, tuner. All the stuff is being upgraded and made better. Another major upgrade that they decided to do on this, again, making these the best playable option in their price point that you could do. So now they are setting them up better out of the box by plecking each one of these. Martin is recognizing the power of the pleck machine and what it's capable of doing. Now they're doing all of their guitars with one. It is a better
Including
setup.
the X-Series, that's really...
That is pretty impressive to make sure you have a well set up and well great playing guitar right out of the box.
I want to take a moment and say how important I think that is, because most people, honestly, if we're going to be honest, that are gravitating towards the X series are beginner players. They're players that are just getting into playing guitar. They're not jumping up to a $3,000, $2,000 guitar that has a better setup. And one of my pet peeves that I hate so much is to get into your entry-level instrument, the setup discourages people from playing it and sticking with it. And they're unfairly punished for the budget they're in to not be able to play guitar.
You, sir, did not spend enough money. You shall suffer with sharp fingers and hurt whatever.
Improper intonation and all those things that discourage people from sticking with it. I think that's a great investment to say, let's make sure these play as good for that beginner entry-level player as the intermediate to expert level instruments.
What we're going to do right now is get into our scores, Jer. This is based on a 1 to 5 system, like same as we always do. There are decimal points in between, but we're going to talk about these different categories and where we rank them in like price points.
And we
because we want to make that fair.
We decided to go with the X2 series, this guitar I'm holding here, which probably is their most popular of the X series, to give you a little bit of a reference point.
Plus, it shows off all of those new upgrades that they have added on the X series. So let's start with tone, Jer. What is your thoughts on the tone of the new X2?
I'm pretty impressed. In this price range, I think it is a really good option. It's got, I'm not going to say it's the most sophisticated sound to it, but it does have a real fullness, that solid top on it. We mentioned earlier, it makes a big difference from the HPL. So yeah, I think tone-wise in this price range, I'm going to give it a 4.3.
I might be a little more reserved on this, only because I am looking at other guitars at the same price point. I do think it's an excellent sounding guitar. Do I think it's the best bang for your buck? I don't know if I can quite go there as far as tone. I do think it is a great sounding guitar. It is a big surprise in what it is capable of doing, but it's still going to be an HPL backed guitar. Doesn't quite have the intricacies of an all solid wood guitar or even a laminate back inside guitar. So you said 4.3. I guess I'm not far off from that. I'd say a 4.2. So yeah, I just don't think it's quite tone-wise up to some of the stuff that is in its price point, but it's still a big surprise for what it is capable of doing.
It's up there with some of the top competitors in that price point.
I agree. Now we'll get into setup and playability. I'm pretty sure I know where you're going to go with this, because we did mention that these are plekked. They're well set up out of the box. I don't have any major complaints on this. I think it plays as good as any Martin has out of the box for me. It plays and runs about the same. So I'm actually going to give it a 4.8.
Yeah, I think playability is fine on it. I think for brand new players, they're going to really enjoy that it's set up pretty low and easy to play. As you get up the neck, it might be a little bit high. I'm going to give it about a 4.6 for playability. It's really nice.
Yeah. Build quality in here right now, I think they're overall a pretty good guitar. I do see sometimes some of the edges in some of the feathering of the braces and some of that kind of stuff that could be cleaned up a little bit nicer. But the finish on this is great. I do think overall there's a lot of value here. So I'm going to give it a 4.6.
I think I agree with you on this, John. They're trying to keep costs down, so they're not spending a ton of money on the build in general. They figure out ways that they can reproduce a really good sounding and good playing guitar on a mass level. But it's not bad at all. I think overall it's built really well. I'm going to give it a 4.5.
The aesthetics, the look of these, I do think adding these new prints made a big difference. Again, this is a tough one because I think all of us are going to have a little bit of prejudice against an HPL guitar because we're so used to seeing the woods and the gorgeous stuff. And honestly, I've seen people in the shop that have been tricked by the back end sides. Just like, that is gorgeous. What is that? That haven't spent as much time on in guitar world as some of us have. So I'd actually still, again, I think this is doing a pretty good job. I like that one a lot. I love the burst on this particular one. I like the satin tuners. For its price point, I think it's a really good looking guitar with that zirconia back and sides. So the overall looks, for me, I'm going to give it a 4.7.
Good. I think they spent some time deciding that, hey, we don't have to make these look ugly. They can be affordable and look attractive. So I think that was a big upgrade on the sides and back with the prints they're using. I think little things, I noticed like the bracing on the inside is really rough and they haven't really smoothed those out very much. It's kind of a minor thing in this price point, but again, it takes a little bit away from the aesthetic. The sunburst looks really nice. The bridge looks a little bit dry and just kind of, some of the aesthetics on it aren't quite up to some of the other ones we found in this price point. But that being said, I'm still going to give it a 4.5. I think it's a decent. Those upgrades on it really raised. It would have been a much lower score before, but those really made it aesthetically look nice to me.
As far as the sustainability of these guitars, we know that these are very, very sustainable. So they do fall in our shop sustainable place, where we will be planting one tree in its place.
For everyone that sells.
For everyone that sells, because they did a really good job on this. Overall value, this is a tough one, because I know that there is value to the Martin name. There is some Martin tone that is happening here. Is it the best sounding guitar we've heard in this price point? I'm going to be honest, I'm telling you it's not. It is good. I don't know if I can go as far as to say it's great. I think it's a really good option if you are tied to having a Martin guitar and you want to have it at this price point. Unlike variations in the past where I would have told you absolutely not, these are not good guitars. I think, especially the X2 series, I think is actually a pretty darn good guitar. So this is where I'm a little bit torn. I'm going to give it a 4.2 on its overall value. I think it gets a little bit more because of its brand lineage and power. They did do a good job with the look, but is it the best value that we see in that $600 to $800 price range? Probably not.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you. There are options from Yamaha, Alvarez, or Eastman that are building some really good guitars in those price ranges. And this one does have a lot of things. It is a contender in that. And some people may feel that having your guitar plekked already from factory, having the Martin name and lineage and history, resellability even in the X series is worth more to them. So it does have its advantages that make its value up there. Some of the things me and you value a little bit more might not give it as high a score as others might. So I'm going to be with you on that. I'm going to give it 4.3 in the overall value.
So let's cover our 5 key questions. Jared, who do you think this guitar was intended for?
So I mentioned earlier, a lot of people that are starting out with the X series are probably beginner players. That would be one segment. Somebody that's just getting into it has always wanted a Martin. Their grandpa had a Martin. Their dad had a Martin. They are wanting to learn the guitar but can't jump into some of the more well-known Martin models, the D18 or D28. This is a very affordable option for the beginner player. Also, we've talked about this in the past, somebody that wants a very durable guitar that they can leave in their motorhome. People that travel a lot, go out canoeing, they can leave these in worse conditions than they would an all solid wood guitar.
These are not indestructible, by the way. They're just
it's not
much
carbon
more
fiber,
durable.
but it is very durable. So somebody that wants a guitar that they can have around the campfire, be strumming in inclement weather, not be as concerned as they would an all solid wood. That might be another segment of their audience.
Sure enough. All right, another key question we ask all the time is how does it sound in comparison to other guitars? Again, the HPL sound is a little bit its own. There is a plasticky nature to its overall tone. I do think having the solid tops eliminates a large portion of that tone. But when you hear this guitar, it plays well, it still runs, but there's not anything like that. It's going to feel more plasticky. So there are some guitars in that world, but I don't know if it's necessarily.
And we're talking right now acoustically. This is how they sound. Plug that pickup in, and you can dial it in, and it can sound very much like a guitar, much more expensive than these are. When they put the solid wood top on there, it gets a lot closer. Again, it doesn't quite have. We discussed a lot the amount that you can actually get from the back of a guitar when you get like with those tone guards on there. It shows how much the back produces. And I think even the HPL on the back is limiting a little bit, even compared to a laminate guitar.
Sure.
So I'm not going to say it doesn't sound good. It is just a different sound.
I do think it's going to be a better sounding guitar than most of your mass-produced guitars in the lower end Epiphone / Alvarez / there are definitely some major tonal upgrades, and some of the technology and smarts that they have spent years and years developing in the sound of Martin guitars is definitely in there, but it's not going to sound like what we traditionally think of as a Martin guitar. So another one is, what are some of the bad points of this? And I guess the first one everybody's going to talk about, there's 2 major ones that I think everybody will talk about is, 1, it's not a wood guitar. It just isn't. Number 2, it's not an American-made Martin. Those are 2 things that probably will get it its biggest dings right out of the box from Martin fans.
Which is exactly why they're built. I mean, they wanted a price point where they can offer a Martin guitar to a different segment of the population. And the way to do that is not using solid woods and having another factory down in Mexico doing the actual production of them. So both the reasons that it may be a con are the reasons that these guitars even exist.
Yeah, it's this or jump up to a $2,800 guitar, I guess. Those are your options. So when we do this at a $900 or $600 price point, there has to be some things that we give up. And in this case, it's going to be real wood and the fact that it's not going to be made in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So what do you think these guitars kind of compare to, Jer?
So I know some options out there, or some comparisons out there might be like the Academy series from Taylor, the Regent series from Alvarez, but these are different. These are using a different substance or material for the back and sides. Do you have any other?
Yes, you mentioned a couple ones. I do think these have more of a Martin sound than any of those series, especially the Academy series. I do think, yes, they are using laminate wood materials on the Academy, but I don't necessarily think the Academy series sounds like Taylor's do, where I still think there is a lot of a Martin sound that is happening here. More so than some of these other options. Obviously, when we talk about Alvarez and Washburn and those that are building similar price point guitars, they're not necessarily trying to sound like their granddaddy main lines. But that said, I think these definitely stack in that line and do kind of give you more of what you expect to hear from Martin. I think another great place that you can make some comparisons is in the durable market. Since these are so durable, you're going to compare them more towards the carbon fiber stuff. And in that case, this is a much more affordable option. I mean, most of, whether it's Close, whether it's McPherson, whether it's Rain Song or Emerald or any of those are all going to be $2,000 to $5,000 guitars. I think some of them are building some in the $1,000 price range. But this is much more affordable. It's not going to be as durable, but if you're wanting a guitar that is durable enough to take on colder temperatures and warm temperatures and all that kind of stuff, yet isn't trying to be indestructible, this is probably a really good option to put into that line. I think the next best thing that we should do is let people hear the differences between the new upgraded stuff. Now, there are some upgrades in the 1 series, but the majority of them came into the 2. So we're going to do a little tone demo so that you guys can hear the difference between the X1 and the X2. us know what you guys think. Those were both pretty cool little sound. They definitely sound different. I do think we're getting more of the earthy wood sound out of the X2, and I do think it's a actual great option for somebody looking in that price range. It's not one where in the past, I'll be honest, if you'd have come at me, I would have probably said that's probably not one I'd put in my list.
And I think, you said, let us know what you guys think. These seem to be one of those guitars that can get some people pretty heated. The Martin loyalists that have been there and are really about the Martin heritage have never been big fans of the X Series, and so they'll be very vocal about that. But like I said, this is not built for them. This is built for a different market, and I think it is a good option for some folks.
Well, if you like talking about Martin guitars and like hearing us talk about Martin guitars, we have another video that I'd like you to check out. It's going to be a link right here. It's going to be comparing whether or not it's worth upgrading from the D12 to a D18. What are the difference? Is it worth spending the money? I've had a great time talking about all these guitars. I know Jeremy's had a great time just getting to hold a guitar. He loves getting to do that. So
My shoulder hurts already.
We'll see you on the next video. Have a great one. See you next time.